I've worked at Yellowstone National Park for over 12 years, long enough to stop believing in most tourist stories. Long enough to know the difference between a bobcat scream and a person's, long enough to recognize the smell of volcanic sulfur from the stench of something off. I started as a seasonal ranger in the summer of 2013, mostly working trails and assisting the interpretation staff around Old Faithful. The geyser's predictability is a miracle in its own right, but what always struck me as strange was how we treated it like a performance. Every 90 minutes or so, hundreds of tourists crowd around, cameras ready, gasping as the steam bellows upward in a flawless, timed display. Like it's on cue. Like it knows we're watching. I didn't think much of it at first. Geysers are geothermal vents, hot groundwater heated by magma textbook stuff. But by year 5, the little thing started to get under my skin. First was the sound. Old Faithful doesn't just roar. Right before each eruption, if you're close enough, say, on the wrong side of the rope, there's a faint tone beneath the hiss, a whistling but deeper, more musical. I once compared it to an old wind-up music box, slowed down and half melted. At first, I thought it was machinery, maybe seismic instruments humming inside the pit. But it wasn't regular. Some eruptions had it. Some didn't. And when it did happen, the dogs in the crowd would whine. Children would cover their ears. And one time, I swear to God, a woman fainted before the water even sprayed. She hit the pavement hard. Later said she heard her dead father's voice in the steam. We brushed it off. Heat stroke. Altitude sickness. Typical park issues. But it kept happening. The turning point for me was late September. During the shoulder season, fewer crowds, colder winds. Bison lumbered through the fog in slow silhouettes. I was assigned a midnight perimeter check routine for off-season. Flashlight in hand, radio clipped to my vest, boots crunching the frozen gravel path around Old Faithful. The geyser doesn't erupt like clockwork at night. That's a myth. It's mostly silent. Sleeping. But at 12:47 a.m. it went off. No warning. No pre-bubbling. No seismic trigger. Just a single sharp whistle that cracked through the cold, followed by a surge of water so fast it shook the ground. I fell on my ass. Steam flooded the clearing. Dense. Blinding. And then I heard something that still haunts me. Footsteps, coming from inside the steam. Not loud, not heavy. Just wet, barefoot. One after another, I called out, thinking someone had jumped the fence. You need to come back to the trail. The steps paused, then turned and ran directly at me. I couldn't see a damn thing, just fog and shadows. My flashlight hit nothing but vapor. But the sound was real, getting louder. Faster. I raised my radio. Before I could press the button, the footsteps stopped inches from my face, and something whispered, "You're not the one we're waiting for." The fog cleared within seconds. Nothing was there. No footprints. No water on the ground. Just me, trembling, alone in the silence. I filed the report as a steam pocket release. Didn't mention the voice. Didn't mention how the batteries in my radio melted inside the casing, but I knew what I heard. And it was only the beginning. There's an old utility basement beneath the Upper Geyser Basin Lodge that most visitors and even a lot of staff don't know about. Half of it's sealed. The other half is used for storage. Forgotten hoses, rusted electrical panels, boxes of worn-out rain ponchos with logos that haven't been used since the 80s. I didn't mean to find the journal. I was down there looking for a portable generator during a brief power outage. Some storm knocked half the grid offline, and we were trying to keep guests from freezing upstairs. It was buried behind a stack of folded cot frames in a milk crate that smelled like mildew and scorched copper, black leather, water damaged. No name on the cover. Inside were dozens of entries written in the same tight, blocky handwriting. The dates ranged from 1991 to 1996. Pages were warped, but the ink hadn't bled. And the entries weren't casual field notes, they were obsessions. Whoever wrote it was watching Old Faithful long before I ever got here. October 3rd, 1991, 2:11 a.m. Eruption was early again. Second time this week, but not listed in the logs. No seismic activity. Nothing from the sensors. Just started. Saw something in the plume. Not a figure, not exactly. A ripple, like something huge pressed its face up against the inside of the earth. Like it was listening. January 19th, 1992, 1:04 a.m. They called it a steam burp again. I know better. I saw the dogs bolt before the eruption. One ran headfirst into a post. The guests didn't notice, but the air vibrated. One of the newer rangers vomited. Said he smelled blood in the fog. April 25th, 1994, undated. I saw her again, standing in the mist, wearing my wife's coat, but she's been dead 10 years. She mouthed something, same words as last time. "He's waking up, Bob." Dozens of pages like that. Some were crossed out, others circled, but one word appeared over and over in the margins, in all caps, even once burned into a page with what looked like a cigarette. Sentinel. The last entry was short. August 11th, 1996. I think I was chosen. I think that's what they want. I've stopped dreaming in English. I need to go under. And that was it. No name, no signature, no follow-up. I asked the lodge director if there was ever a ranger stationed here in the 90s who just disappeared. He went quiet for a moment, then said, "You mean Ellis, yeah. Real quiet guy, kind of a loner. Went out for a thermal inspection and never came back. They think he slipped into a fumarole. But they never found a body." I didn't tell him about the journal. Didn't tell him I started dreaming in steam that night. The next morning, Old Faithful erupted 26 minutes early. Only one person was standing near the barrier fence, a kid in a red hoodie. Everyone else was asleep. There wasn't supposed to be a show, but it went off anyway. And when I got closer, the boy turned to me and asked, "Are you the new Sentinel?" I waited 3 days before opening the journal again. I kept it tucked in the bottom of my locker, beneath an emergency blanket and an old map of the lower loop. I tried to forget it. I couldn't. I kept hearing the kid's voice. "Are you the new Sentinel?" The way he said it wasn't casual. It wasn't a question. It was more like he was confirming something he already knew. I asked around. No one on staff saw a boy that night. No parents reported a missing child. No red hoodie. I even checked with the other rangers on night shift. One of them swore up and down that nobody was within 500 feet of the geyser when it erupted. But I know what I saw, and I knew it wasn't the last time I'd see him. I remembered the name the lodge director mentioned, Ranger Ellis. I dug through old service records. Most had been digitized by 2001, but Ellis's file was thin, just a printed folder. Name, DOB, hire date, and one final entry, presumed dead. Body unrecovered. No burial, no forwarding address. But something was odd. His last listed emergency contact was blacked out, not just crossed out. Redacted, like someone took a marker and scrubbed the name from existence. I took a day off and drove out to the northwestern edge of the park, near a forgotten ranger outpost called Fireloop Ridge. It's not open to the public. Used to be a lookout before the main station took over. Most maps don't even list it anymore. But I'd heard rumors from older staff that Ellis built a cabin out there, off-grid. No permits. No one ever went to check. I found it just before dusk. No lights. No trail. Just a small A-frame shack nestled behind a curtain of pine, about a mile off the service road. The door was cracked. Inside shelves lined with old geological surveys, laminated maps, and Polaroids, dozens of them. All of Old Faithful, but taken at weird angles. From the ground, from the treetops. One even looked like it was taken from inside the steam plume, impossible as that sounds. Then I saw him, sitting in the corner, thin, pale, gray beard down to his chest. He didn't even flinch when I stepped in, just looked up at me with sunken eyes and said, "You opened the journal, didn't you?" His name was Thomas Ellis, but he made me call him Tom. He didn't speak for long, just long enough to tell me one thing. The geyser isn't just geothermal. It's biological. It has a pulse. And when it calls for a sentinel, someone always answers. I asked him what that meant. He just shook his head, then said something I didn't understand until much later. The last eruption won't be water. He gave me a rusted thermal imaging sheet, old tech, printed on transparent paper. It showed the geyser cone from above, but beneath it was a shape, rounded, almost skeletal, and it was moving very slowly, like something turning over in its sleep. Tom wouldn't speak anymore. He asked me to leave, begged me, actually. As I stepped out, I heard him whisper, "Tell them not to dig." I never saw him again. The next morning, the USGS conducted an unscheduled scan of Old Faithful. A report was filed internally. I wasn't supposed to see it. But one of the techs left the tablet unlocked. I saw 3 words highlighted in red across the core data readout. Vascular geothermal anomaly. That night, I dreamed I was underground, curled in steam, listening to a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The visitor center burned down 2 nights after I visited Ellis. I was the first to see the smoke. 2:11 a.m.? Exactly. I was walking the lower basin trail, trying to clear my head, when I noticed the flicker behind the tree line. Orange glow pulsing through the steam like fireflies trapped in glass. I radioed it in. Response came fast, too fast. Before I even finished my sentence, my supervisor, Jim Collins, came through loud and clear. Disregard that. We're aware of the situation. His voice was calm, too calm. By the time I got back to the visitor center, it was over. No flames, no ash, no structural damage. Just a black scorch mark across the northern wall in the shape of a hand, 5 fingers, each one stretching nearly 6 feet high. No one else saw it. By morning, the wall had been repainted, fresh white, glossy, like nothing happened. When I asked Jim what the hell was going on, he looked at me with the same expression you'd give a wild animal in the road. Not anger, not pity, just distance. There are things older than the park. We maintain the story. That's our job. He didn't explain further. Didn't need to. The tremors started the next night. Always at 2:09 a.m. The park's seismic activity is monitored constantly. Minor shifts aren't unusual. But this was different. These weren't quakes. They were pulses, short, rhythmic, deep. We checked the seismograph logs. The pattern wasn't random, it was repeating. 5 beats. Pause. 5 beats. Pause. Like something knocking. Ellis's words came back to me. The last eruption won't be water. I started sleeping in my truck near the geyser. Couldn't explain why. I just needed to be close. I watched every plume, logged every whistle, listened to the vibrations in the ground. Then, at 2:09 a.m. on the 6th night, Old Faithful erupted again, but this time it didn't spray water. It bled. Thick red vapor shot up into the air, staining the fog like oil in a snow globe. Tourists weren't around to see it, thank God. But I was. And I swear, inside that crimson mist, I saw a rib cage. Just for a second. Something enormous, curved, and hollow. Moving. Breathing. By the time backup arrived, the mist had cleared. The ground was dry. The air smelled like copper and rot. I didn't file a report. Didn't need to. I wasn't the only one watching that night. There were others in the tree line. Still figures. No flashlights. Just silhouettes, each wearing red hoodies. The invitation came the next morning, a folded note placed under my truck windshield. No envelope, no name, just a stamped emblem I'd never seen before, a black circle with 3 concentric rings and a single vertical line splitting them. Inside, 5 words. Maintenance briefing. Below. 4:00 p.m. Alone. I thought it was a joke. Then I saw Jim Collins waiting at the service elevator near the North Rim compound. He didn't smile, just nodded once, held the door, and pressed a key card I'd never seen before. The elevator took us underground, far below anything I knew existed beneath Yellowstone. We arrived at a concrete corridor with no markings. Cold fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled like clay and sterilizer. Jim led me in silence to a small conference room with mirrored walls and a long table of dark wood. 7 people were already seated. All of them wore gray park ranger uniforms, but none of them had name tags. One woman, the oldest, finally spoke. Mr. Price, you've been identified as a viable candidate for replacement Sentinel designation. Congratulations. I opened my mouth to protest, but she raised her hand. You've seen it. You've heard the pulse. You've made contact with the steam-born. You found Ellis. That qualifies you. The others remained silent. Then she said something I'll never forget. Old Faithful is not a geyser. It is a vent, a pressure valve for something beneath this basin. Something living, sleeping, bound. We are not rangers. We are its custodians. She pulled out a thick folder and opened it to reveal a topographic map of the park, but layered. Each layer represented a different time period. The oldest went back 12,000 years. On every layer, the vent was marked not as Old Faithful, but as the throat. The being beneath this land is not a creature in the traditional sense, she continued. It has no form, not one we can survive perceiving. But it's active, and over millennia, it's developed sensitivities. It dreams in pulses, feeds on memory. When the pressure builds too high, it must be vented. If not, it finds other ways to release. I thought of the steam, the red mist, the voice in the fog. I asked what the sentinels were for. She said, to listen, to appease, and to give it what it wants before it wakes up. Then she gave me one final thing, a tape recorder. Worn, bold, labeled in black marker. Sentinel Log 6, Ellis. I played it that night in my cabin, static at first, then breathing, then Ellis's voice. You don't guard the park, you guard what's under it. You don't patrol trails, you patrol its dreams. You think you work here by accident, you were chosen. Every one of us is chosen. Then a pause, then his last recorded words. When it learns your name, it uses your voice. I shut off the tape, but the whisper didn't stop. From the back of the room, barely audible. Price. It started with my ID badge. The morning after the briefing, I tried to clock in. My keycard didn't work. The digital reader blinked red, chirped once, and rejected it. I went to the front desk. The admin staffer blinked when I gave her my name, typed it in, frowned. There's no one listed under that name, sir. I laughed, thought she was messing with me. Then she turned the screen so I could see it. No entry, no file, no photo. Like I'd never worked there at all. I rushed to the personnel office. Same story. They pulled out the ranger roster for the month my name was gone. Even the locker I used had been reassigned. My gear cleared out. My boots gone. My cabin locked. Someone else was living in it. I tried to text Jim. No reply. I tried to call, straight to voicemail. I even drove down to the emergency radio tower, pinged his private line on our internal ranger channel. Dead silence. But 20 minutes later, I found something taped to my windshield again. A single scrap of paper, torn at the edges. 3 words. The throat remembers. That night, the whisper came again. From my closet, from inside my mirror. It didn't say my name anymore. It just breathed. Not loud, not threatening. Almost gentle, like it was savoring the moment. The next day, I found the word throat scratched into the inside of my ranger hat. Then on the underside of my coffee mug, then on the mirror in the public restroom by the trailhead, fogged into the glass like condensation. Only I could see it, and every time I blinked, it was closer. On the 7th day, I walked the Lower Basin Trail and stopped in front of Old Faithful. It hadn't erupted in over an hour. The tourists had mostly cleared out. Only one man stood near the rope. Gray hoodie, pale skin. I stepped closer. He turned. And he had my face, but older, worn, eyes like glass. He reached out and touched my shoulder, whispered, "You are ready now." I tried to pull away, but my boots locked in place. The ground opened beneath me. The familiar whistle built, but this time it was louder than ever. Like 1,000 flutes screaming in unison. Then steam, red, burning, rising. Something grabbed my leg, dragged me down. I woke up underground, surrounded by stone, heat, and breathing walls that pulsed with steam. In front of me, a staircase leading deeper into the crust. And at the bottom, I swear, something was waiting, watching, smiling without a face. I don't know how far I fell. The walls weren't made of stone anymore, not exactly. They pulsed, flexed, not with heat, with life. The tunnel beneath Old Faithful wasn't carved by water. It was grown. I don't remember walking. I just remember moving forward. My boots gliding across soft ground that steamed with each step. The air down there wasn't air. It tasted like copper and mushrooms, like lungs that didn't belong to me were doing the breathing. That's when I saw it. A small wooden bench, old, splintered, and sitting on it, a body. It was Ellis, or what was left of him. His ranger uniform hung like a rag over bone. One eye socket was filled with crystallized ash. His mouth was open, like he'd been whispering something when he died, and in his lap a second journal. This one wasn't dated like the first. It was organized by name. The first page said, Sentinel 7 Price. Duties begin September 23rd. First breach, September 29th. Vocal infection complete, October 4th. Full integration, October 7th. Collapse event, October 12th. Casualty projection, 37,000 plus. My hands trembled. Those dates were in the future, but not by much. The next pages weren't written in English. They weren't even written in one language, just fragments, phrases, symbols, sketches of faces that didn't quite look human. Then, near the end, a phrase repeated over and over. The throat remembers. The mouth learns. The eye will awaken. I dropped the journal, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps, but not from behind me. From inside the wall to my left bulged. A human hand pushed through it, thin, gray, translucent skin stretched over finger bones that seemed too long. Another arm followed. Then a face pressed into the wall, trying to birth itself forward, but it wasn't alive. It was me, or a version of me, mouth open, skin steaming, eyes gone. Head tilted, it whispered in my voice. You were always the dream, not the dreamer. I turned and ran. The tunnel stretched. Bent. The laws of space didn't apply anymore. One step forward turned into miles. My radio screamed static, then hissed, collapse imminent. I emerged at sunrise, crawling from a steam vent 50 yards behind the main visitor center, covered in ash, bleeding from both ears. But I was alive. Or at least I thought I was, until I passed a mirror on the maintenance truck and saw his eyes looking back at me. Not mine. His. When I got back to the station, no one recognized me. Not Jim, not the admin staff. Not even the maintenance guy I shared lunch breaks with every Thursday for 3 years. Sorry, he said, backing away. This area is restricted to park personnel. I told him my name. He tilted his head. Then said, that name's not on the active roster. Sir, you'll need to leave. I laughed, pulled out my wallet, showed him my driver's license. He squinted. That doesn't look like you. But it did. It was me. Same photo, same face. But when I looked down at the ID, the eyes were wrong. Too wide, too curious. Like the picture wasn't frozen, like it was watching me back. I drove to Livingston, Montana, 2 hours north. My brother lives there, or lived, anyway. I knocked on his door just after dusk. He answered in pajama pants and a t-shirt, holding a half-finished beer. Looked older than I remembered, tired. Can I help you? He asked. I told him who I was. His smile faded. Is this a joke? Then he called for his wife. She came to the door, looked me up and down, and said, Derek, your brother died in 2017. He fell into a thermal vent at Yellowstone. They never found the body. I drove back in silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened. And at exactly 2:09 a.m., I felt it again. The pulse. But not from Yellowstone. This one came from the east. I checked the seismic logs. Sure enough, a microquake in Virginia, centered around a small, defunct geyser field near the Shenandoah Valley, a place that had been dormant for 12,000 years. Until now, at 3:00 a.m., I got a call. Unlisted number. A voice like mine answered, only deeper. It said, the mouth is open. The Sentinels have failed. Then static. The next day, I returned to Yellowstone. Old Faithful didn't erupt. Not once. Instead, the ground trembled. The steam hissed, and the faces in the mist didn't fade. They multiplied, dozens of them. All of them wearing my face, all of them whispering. You were never the ranger. You were always the vent. I stopped sleeping on October 11th. Every time I closed my eyes, I fell not into dreams, but into echoes. Downward, always downward. Through steaming corridors made of teeth and memory, through caves shaped like lungs, through my own face stretched across walls that inhaled. Each time I heard voices. Not many, just one. Mine, speaking before I could think, telling stories I hadn't lived yet, whispering warnings in languages I shouldn't know. But last night, it said something new. You are not a dreamer anymore. You are the dream, and the throat no longer sleeps. I drove straight to the geyser basin. Didn't stop for clearance. Didn't stop when I crossed the restricted boundary. Didn't stop when the security lights turned red and the alarms began wailing behind me. Old Faithful stood still, silent, waiting. The ground beneath me wasn't solid anymore. It flexed, and then, just like that, the earth opened. Not an eruption, an invitation. I stepped down into the vent, no resistance. No heat, only understanding. The tunnel was smooth, glossy, like the inside of a throat, but it pulsed now not just with heat, but with intent, like it had finally found the words it needed. Ellis was waiting at the bottom, Not dead, not quite alive either. He stood at the edge of a glowing chasm, his body semi-transparent, skin flickering with images, maps, faces, symbols. "You thought you were the last," he said, "but we are all Sentinels now." And then I saw it. Across the cavern, something stirred, not a creature, not a god, not a thing, but a concept given shape. It had faces, but none of them were real, just masks worn for our sake, for comfort. Behind them, a writhing absence that bent perception like heat over asphalt. Every pulse from Old Faithful had been a heartbeat. Every eruption, a shiver. It hadn't been contained. It had been concentrating, learning, practicing how to wake. And when I saw its eye open, a vertical pupil the size of a bus, rotating with colors not meant for daylight, I understood the final truth. The geyser wasn't keeping something buried. It was feeding something inside us. All the Sentinels, Ellis, the boy in the red hoodie, the nameless rangers, and finally, me had been conduits. We weren't protecting the park from it. We were helping it remember. The more we learned, the more we described, the more it took form. It needed minds. It needed imagination. It needed narrative. And now it had enough. I woke up this morning on the side of the road near Gardner, Montana. No ranger truck, no uniform. Just a handwritten sign next to me, propped up on a rusted shovel. 5 words. "You're the story now. Speak." And I am, because when I stop speaking, when I stop thinking, stop writing, I feel it crawling back up my throat. And I know the next eruption won't be from Yellowstone. It'll be from me, and maybe from you.